The Enneagram is far more than most people have realised it to be. It is fundamental to the unfoldment of the universe. The Enneagram itself is a symbol, and the symbol is actually a matrix of energy. It's a vortex that demonstrates how energy moves, how it interacts, how it flows in cycles. And essentially, the Enneagram is part of the blueprint of the universe. It shows consciousness and the patterns that exist within consciousness. There are, as scientists, mathematicians, physicists and quantum physicists and so on have already begun to explore patterns that exist within the universe, that nothing in the universe is actually in a state of chaos. Everything has order. It is just a case of finding these specific patterns, these specific mathematical formulae that actually begin to explain the unfoldment of these patterns. And we can do that with the planets. We can even do that with biological life in terms of the cycles of plants and the way flowers bloom. Now, nobody has so far yet begun to understand the real complexities of the human psyche, of human consciousness, that so far we have almost come to the conclusion that it's random, that the way you have developed is because of your parents, that you are a unique individual, which is true. However, the Enneagram is actually part of that matrix, part of that pattern that scientists have sought to understand the universe through. And we can actually begin to understand the complex levels of human behaviour using the Enneagram, because the Enneagram actually plots specific predictable patterns of behaviour. Not just the way that it's expressed, but more specifically the reasons behind it, the origins of behaviour, which nobody has really begun to understand. In many ways, we've begun to become confused by the Enneagram, thinking that it's an invention of man, that people have come up with this system in order to understand the human psyche, where in fact we have almost by accident stumbled across what is the real foundation, the real elemental truth of the unfoldment of consciousness, that it explains the seed that came into life unnurtured in the small body of a human child, which was then nurtured through the parental environment and began to grow into one of the 9 personality types. Just as you would look into a garden and see a flower and look at that flower, and you wouldn't for a moment think that that flower had occurred randomly just through the process of the environmental circumstances it found itself in. Of course it didn't. The quality of the bloom indeed was to do with where it found itself, the fertility of the soil, how much water it had got, etc., etc. But essentially it started off from a tiny little speck of potentiality. Now that we call a seed or a bulb when it's planted. For humanity, this is what we call the vehicle of consciousness. And this vehicle of consciousness is something that is tangible. This isn't something that's esoterical nonsense. This is something that when you came into life, it was there. It was in place. It was like there was potential for who you were going to be ready to go. And the way that it unfolded was then to do with how you were parented, how you began to react with your environment, which is, in this analogy, the way the flower begins to grow. So there's something here which is deeply almost mathematical because of the nature of numbers within the Enneagram.